So good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today for the PermitSTAT. So we're here to talk today about ways that we can improve and streamline and make more customer-friendly the permitting process. And so here today, Mayor, we have a number of key agencies that are involved in the permitting process here to talk with you. And we have some slides to go through to show you what the data looks like, and then also want to talk through some of the challenges and hear from directors about ideas they have to make the process improved.
Okay.
And
Why don't we say who's here?
Sure.
Rashad Young, City Administrator.
Ryan Kenner, Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development.
Tim White, DEMPED.
Andrew Trueblood, DEMPED.
Leif Storms, Joe D-Dot.
Melinda Bowling, DCRA.
Tommy Wells, Department of Energy and Environment.
Brian McDermott, sitting in for George Hawkins, DC Water.
What do you do there, Brian?
I'm the Director of the Permit Operations Group.
Okay. LaQuandra Nesbitt, Department of Health.
Eric Shaw, Office of Planning.
Greer Gillis, Department of General Services.
Christian Barrera, on behalf of the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services.
Barry Kreisworth in the Office of the City Administrator.
Jenny Reed, Chief Performance Officer.
Okay.
Leah Katz, the Office of Performance Management.
Guy Hammond, Office of Performance Management.
David Yoakum, Office of Performance Management. John Thomas, Chief Performance Officer, DDOT.
Matthew Marcoux, Public Space Regulation and Administration of the District.
Oh, long time no see, Matthew Marcoux. Good to see you. Sir?
Marion Gibson, Food Safety and Hygiene Inspector Services, Department of Health.
Department of Health.
Good morning, Lori Harris, Deputy Director, DCRA.
Okay.
Steve Colcott, Construction Innovation Office.
Okay.
Jen Stutz, DOE.
Brian Van Ly, DOE.
Jeff Bonvecchio, Department of General Services.
Lindsay Miller Fiera, OCA. Today, welcome to the Mayor for Health and Human Services.
Well, welcome to the
Thank
office.
Good morning, Madam Mayor. Ernest Trump, I'm coming for high peoples.
Good.
Catherine Holt, Office of the City Administrator.
Jacob Warren, Office of the City Administrator. Charles Hank Williams, Office of the City Administrator.
And Wendell Felder, Office of the City Administrator.
Okay. All right.
So we're here to, talk about the permitting system, and I think there's two kind of system challenges that we approached this CapStat with. One, there's very complex processes. So as you can see, we have a number of agencies sitting around the table that are involved in the permitting process. There are numerous entry points, numerous IT systems at work here. We also have complaints that permit issuance times can be lengthy, and we'll see some data about the variations of that. And so we approached the stat asking kind of three questions that we'd like to really build toward and leave with recommendations in today. One, what would it take to implement a streamlined, user-friendly permitting process? Two, what would it take to have an integrated district-wide permitting technology system so we can see across agencies how we're doing? And then three, how do we reduce issuance times?
So let's kind of just step back and ask ourselves the kind of Joe voter, Joe homeowner, Joe developer, or Joan, as it were, question. Is our system performing in a way that people expect? Or is our system putting too many roadblocks in the way of what people want to do? What do you think, Tommy?
Well, I think that we're a city that's so built out that that the overlay on one hand has a historical legacy to a lot of the regulations and such, but on the other hand is trying to continue to be best practices. I think that it can be daunting, but you take Capitol Hill, the largest historic district in the country. It has an overlay that people can't put vinyl windows up. So I think there's a reason for stuff, but I think it is a labyrinth to get through.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would say, Mayor, that the industry has developed such that there's several different players that play a role. Even when we came up with the E-Plan review system, which we call Project Docs, you still have the owner, and in between there you have the design professional and the expediter. And we're finding that there can be confusion, so the owner doesn't have the transparency that they would need.
Didn't we change something related to that?
The expediter is still playing a role because design professionals, quite honestly, don't necessarily want to do what the expediters do. They don't want to upload plans. They don't want to deal with the agencies. They want to have an expediter handle it for them. And we are finding that when there are corrections to be made, the business model for the expediter has them not wanting to go back to the design professional. They try to fix it themselves, even though they're not licensed design professionals and incapable of doing so. And it causes further delay. So those levels in between, those layers in between, cause delays for the homeowner, Joan or Joe, and they don't have the transparency to know what's going on.
Okay. So let's come back to that question, because I know that's something that you brought to my attention in August, and I thought that was a recommended solution.
Well, we
to have
did-
the owner have more ownership over their application to us.
We did, as promised, include the owner's email so that every time something happens with their application, they're notified immediately. But the business model in this jurisdiction has the expediter in the middle of it. And that causes unnecessary delays quite often.
Okay. All right. Let's move on.
Okay. So slide 3 really summarizes a lot of the complexities that the permitting system right now encompasses. And so we're going to talk about some of these as we go through the data, but to sort of put them in 4 big buckets. One, as we talked about, multiple agencies, external partners. More than half of plans require a review by more than one agency. There's use of expediter, so there's a lot of players. There are various system entry points where people can go into the system by engaging various different agencies. Some permits can be done entirely online, whereas some require applicants to visit DCRA in person to proceed. We have 7 different IT systems used across the agencies represented here. The agencies don't always use the same system for plan review and approval, and the systems don't communicate well on the back end. So it's very difficult to run permit processing performance, and it's particularly difficult to look at a particular project. So we can look at individual permits, but it's very difficult to look at a project that may have multiple permits itself, which I think is how the user experiences it.
Okay, so we've titled this slide, Districts Building Permitting Process Complexities. And it sounds passive, like this just happened, right? So this is a system we created, not necessarily those of us around the table right now, but we did make it this way, right? So why can't this slide say District Building Process Simple? So I think that's really what we're doing here. Why do we want to have a permitting process that's filled with complexity? And we're trying to unwind the parts of this process that don't make sense and are overly complex. So why don't we talk a little bit about the IT systems?
Okay, I'll start. DCRA has the land management system, which is called a CELA. That's where all of our permit information is stored. To begin the process for the permit application, you use the online OCPI for permit intake. That's where the actual electronic permit application is uploaded. A separate system is called Project Docs, where the plans are uploaded into the system. And so after you upload your permit application, it goes through a screening process with our permit review coordinators. We determine whether it meets our minimum threshold. If it does, you get an invitation to upload your plans into Project Docs. At that time, it is assigned to whatever agencies need to review it, and then the review starts concurrently. If in fact you have met all of the required codes and all of the agencies, including DCRA, find that you're in compliance, then it's approved and it's ready for issuance. So that's our main IT programs or products at DCRA.
Okay, what are the other 6 systems? What is DDOT use?
We have TOPS, that's the Transportation Online Permitting System. And so that was a homegrown system that was built out probably about 10 years ago and has been modified over time. So it's very specific to the customers that need public space permits for either parking or construction or sidewalk cafes and things like that.
So how do you interact with DCRA?
To the extent that some of those permits require a review by DCRA or another agency, they're added to the review process. But for the most part, we don't have as many dependencies, I think, on other agencies, because we're really just looking at the traffic circumstances, the kind of excavation practices of a particular customer. We've got a lot of repeat business from the utilities, but we have a system that's pretty flexible, and over time we get feedback from the utilities and the expediters, and we make enhancements along the way.
So how many DCRA permits require a DDOT permit or a DDOT sign-off?
So we have, I'll go to slide 4. So this shows you the top, excuse me, bar chart, shows you of all the building permits issued, how many times another agency was involved in those building permits. And so DDOT is our 4th most involved agency, the 2nd being DOEE, and the 3rd being Office of Planning. And the pie chart right below it shows that 57% of the time for building permits, and we're specifically focusing on building permits in the stat. There are a number of other permits here, but we chose to focus on these because they tend to be the most complex and what we feel you and others often hear probably the most complaints about. So more often than not, we have more than one agency reviewing a permit that's coming into DCRA.
So do we see any issues with the sign-offs and the interaction with DDOT on the building permits?
From DCRA's point of view, no, they review in TOPS, but they result in project docs, and so that information is there.
And they are, go ahead.
But I thought that DDOT and other agencies review in a system of their own and input back into the permit system their results. Is that?
That is correct.
So while it works, the issue with that from the customer's standpoint, I think, is an ability to know exactly where something is through one point of entry, and there is some sort of delay because it's not automatic. So when I think about the time to process a permit or to know where the permit is, and I think this is true for other agencies that have review, if you review independent of the source of input, and let's say for a building permit, the source of input might be DCRA initially, then from a customer-facing standpoint, it is clunky.
I would say the customer can see that it is assigned to the DDOT reviewer. They may not know where at in the process of the DDOT review it is, so that would go to the clunkiness that you're pointing out.
I'm referring to.
Yes,
and the total time of issuance from point of entry to a permit being approved, I think there are multiple delay points to the extent that agencies do a different system and it is not automated. So to the question, how does it work? Is it working? It works for how we built it, but it's not ideal, I think, for the problem, for the issue for the service experience we're trying to create.
Yes, sir.
Or somebody can disagree with that, but that's how I view the system.
And what is DOH's interaction, and what system are you using?
So we have a separate. So we have a separate system. We have access to project docs, but our role in the building, speaking to the building permitting process, we have a separate system we use to maintain information on health inspections, which is our role. speaking specifically in this instance around those who are trying to pass a health inspection to have their facilities open. So we maintain all of that content and information in a separate system, and then we report back into project docs as well.
How many people do work on that for DOH?
Our total staff in that division,
Approximately 4.
around 4
Is
individuals.
it around 4?
Yeah.
Or is it 4?
It's 4.
Okay.
But they have responsibilities for not just approving new plans, they also help to keep our facilities that exist operational.
Okay, so how many people work on new plans?
4 food establishments and 1,
Food establishments, 1,
and 4 healthcare facilities, 2.
and healthcare facilities, 2.
So what happens if the food establishment person is on vacation?
Arian does it. They don't go on vacation at the same time.
Okay, so there's never a case where somebody is told you can't have your inspection because this person is on vacation?
That is correct.
Never happens?
It has not while I have been there over the 2 years.
Okay. Okay. And DC Water. So how does DC Water interact with DCRA?
All right. We, DC Water, built our computer program, Maximo, starting back in 2006. And we're not on CityNet, so we're a little bit different operationally. As someone is pursuing a building permit, before they're ever ready to go to DCRA or DDOT, they really need to get basic information on the water and sewer system. And so we encourage people to come early, come often, so you can come to DC Water to start your review long before you would ever practically be in DCRA's system. Our system tracks the review, the comments. It also generates work orders for our staff. So our system says, wonderful, here's the work, here's the review, and as a consequence of the review, there are work orders that are issued to departments to go out and do inspection of work in the system. So we're always going to be in our system because it's our work order system. As a product of our system, you get a certificate of approval that says DC Water has reviewed your plan, signed off, you've paid your fees. Here's a certificate, and you could hand that to DDOT, you can hand that to DCRA, and it will show that their plans have been approved. We've been doing that for a long time. We have more recently, with the advent of Project Docs getting a lot more global, we'll go into Project Docs and sign off on a plan now. We don't do our review there, but when Project Docs requires DC Water approval, we'll go into Project Docs and approve it.
How long has that been happening?
Significantly for the last year. For the last year, it's been a significant effort.
Is it still the case, because Project Docs is the system where people can electronically upload plans, that if the review is not done in Project Docs, are people still required to bring paper copies to DC Water in order for DC Water to do the review, or is there another system they submit those plans to electronically?
At the moment, we ask them to come in and submit to us in paper because we're not doing our review in Project Docs. Also, as they submit to Project Docs, very frequently the plans that they have do not include the site civil plans. They're more specifically the building construction. So the plans that we're looking for are not always part of the Project Docs submission. So we ask them to please come in person. Also, they're going to be doing some research and need to find water and sewer information. It's better done in person, especially when we're talking about building projects where you're really looking at, is it going to be a new connection? What's the water and sewer capacity?
What are the other authorities doing? Do we know? The water authorities around the region?
We do not know.
Various. I couldn't tell you exactly.
Does anybody know? Okay.
So there's
are people
opportunity.
doing that? Are people going to DC Water before they come to DCRA?
We learned in the last couple of weeks that they have been bringing their stuff up to a year ahead of time. They bring it to DC Water But then there's still a requirement when they actually bring their building plans, if DC Water has to sign off, it has to go back to them for whatever review you do.
So people are starting at DC Water a year in advance.
Sure. If you're going to build a building, you pretty ought to find out, do I have water capacity, do I have sewer capacity? Where are those going to be, so then I can identify, where's my water room going to be? You can't really do the design until you've got some idea of where your water and sewer utilities are coming from.
Okay. So what will be our ideal kind of setup with DC Water?
From our perspective, Madam Mayor, it would be for them to review and to result in project docs so that we didn't have to have customers bring paper to DC Water separately.
So why does every project require somebody to come in and bring paper?
They don't, our review process has typically been a paper process.
I know, but that's a different, I'm asking a different question.
Right. It
Why
doesn't-
it doesn't?
It doesn't have to be, and we're looking at electronic document submission processes. It's probably an opportune time to look at project docs, potentially as a source. The issues with that are always going to be the following. All right, wonderful, now the project docs has become an online project and we can get to it. We don't need to go through CityNet. All right, it becomes a lot more valuable to us as a tool and user-friendly. At the same time, in the life of a project, the name, the address, or whatever is changeable. We could all use a singular system if we could all get a nomenclature and an intake system that would accept what it's called here, what it's called in DC Water, what's DC Water's reference, what's DDOT's reference. There has to be a commonality of what do I call it, how do I label it, how do I make sure that this project that today is one name is the same project 2 years from now when they permit it at a different name.
Okay.
If we can get to that kind of a level, then DC Water can do their permit review anywhere. We do it in our own system currently, because we did it. We started it long ago. It doesn't make a difference if it's exactly in our system, the review. It could be in our system, it could be in another one. But that's how we do it. Our execution of work orders and everything will always have to stay in our system. So I can't be out of my system. I might be able to share time in another one. I might be able to download plans and then upload plans back to it.
Okay, okay. Let's talk about the days and the target days.
So this slide, slide 5, walks you through of the top construction permits, the amount of time on average that it takes to issue the 90th, like about 90% of the permits. Good news is the times are going down, but the times vary significantly depending on what type of permit it is. And in a few slides, we'll also look at, I think some of the reason for the extended length of time is there are certain projects that are more likely to go through multiple reviews than others. And so particularly for like a new building permit, there are a lot of sub-permits that are involved in that. And so I think that's part of the reason why we see some of the length of time.
So let's kind of go through these categories. Alteration and repair, is that saying that it takes 115 days?
Now it takes 77. Look at the bottom. So it took 115 days in 2014, and now 90% of the time it takes 77. That's how I read that.
Yes.
That's a lot of days.
77 is a lot of days.
And this is total from start to finish. And I wonder if some of the folks could talk a little bit about what goes into that.
Well, from DCRA's perspective, it includes all of the review cycles. So it's not just the first review cycle. It's, from upload and acceptance until you actually are getting your permit issued. And so it involves all of the sister agencies and all of our reviews and as been mentioned, we have reduced it, but 154 days is, 77 days is a lot.
What is the, are these, would you say that this building permit is mostly used by homeowners?
Homeowners do use alteration and repair a lot, but they also use addition, alteration, and repair a lot.
So what would be the, can you take a guess at the proportion of these?
I would say homeowners are doing more addition, alteration, and repair because they want to add volume to their home when they're doing it. So that would be a larger percentage in the addition, alteration, and repair category vis-a-vis the alteration and repair itself.
So who is the largest in the alteration repair? Who's the largest user?
It would be the homeowners or people building residential units or enlarging existing residential properties.
Okay, so these two are mostly residential.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What do you think the number of days should be for alteration and repair?
We would like for it to be 30.
Like, what is it in Montgomery County?
The last we looked, it was 4 to 6 weeks.
So
30 to
30 to
45.
45.
Yes.
So how can they do it in half the time?
Well, from our outside looking in, we have more historic, we have CFA, we have different agencies that have to play a part in our review across our city because our housing stock is older and how it's permitted. We also have larger volume, and when you're doing construction for adjoining properties, it takes a different complexity of review, whereas you're doing a single-family standalone property where you have, nothing around you. So it impacts it. Oftentimes, when you're having neighbor notification challenges, that will impact the permitting review time. So I would say because we are built out, as Director Wells had said, that does have an impact on our time.
Okay. So how do you get to 30 days?
A number of things that we've done to reduce the time. So we have put together a residential review team that's dedicated to look at those, separate and apart from your homeowners when you come in to do a deck or something small that you go in person and do by yourself. We have a residential review team where your design professional uploads it, and that helps to get the smaller jobs out of the queue to move them along faster. We've also have a commercial tenant layout, so if you have a built building but you're going to come in with a new retail operation, we have a separate team for that. And so those are two of the things that we've looked at. We're looking at different metrics for how we should work, quite honestly. So one of the things we're looking at in our data is whether we should have a rotating schedule where permit reviewers are working on the simple ones 1 week, right? And then you rotate through intermediate ones and see if that gets us a faster review time versus an individual who has to go from a simple to an intermediate to a complex throughout their day. Our review staff has to spend part of their day in the back office reviewing in quiet, and sometimes they have to go to the permit center where you're actually dealing with walk-in clients. And so that can break up your concentration and affect productivity. So we're looking at all of those different measurements and seeing which one will optimize it to get us down to our 30. Additionally, in this jurisdiction, we have a large third-party program, so we're also working to build their capacity as well, so that the entire building community can say that here in the district, we are meeting our time limits.
Are there posted goals for completion anywhere?
No, ma'am, we say for review time, not completion.
Well, so we post the review times for each of these categories?
For the cycle, not the category. So we'll say, if you have compliant plans that are uploaded, we promise to get it reviewed to you in 30 days. That's our metric, our cycle review. So
that's for each of these types, permit types? I'm looking at page 5.
Yes, ma'am. So the review cycle, we promise to get it to you in 30 days. That's what we promise, but we don't promise an issuance time.
You promise a response.
A completed response within 30 days. Yes, ma'am.
And let me make sure I understand the distinction. The review, the 30-day review time is just for DCRA's review?
Well, we publicize it for ourselves, but we've discovered through this data that all of the agencies are meeting it. So we're all collectively meeting the 30 days. We advertise it. So I'm not sure if they also advertise it, but we do advertise it, and everybody's meeting it, if that answers your question.
That does answer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And slide 6 gives you an example of what Director Bowling was just talking about. So target review 30 days, how many days on average 90% of the building permits are reviewed in for the first, second, and third review. So the slide does show we're doing good on the first review. Once the plan is accepted, and I think that's a key asterisk, right? Because there is a whole process that happens before this review even happens, where the plan actually has to be accepted, and there could be a good amount of back and forth. We don't have a way to capture that time, and that I think is one of the missing pieces here. We don't have that chunk of time that someone is experiencing before it gets here.
What do you mean?
So, no, go ahead, sorry.
So, for example, if your design professional has an expediter work with us instead of the design professional themselves, and they do not follow the requirements to get their plans and application into the system with a minimum threshold. They've not stamped the plans. They don't have the elevation where they're supposed to. They don't have the plans included, or the plans that they've uploaded don't match the application that they've submitted. Then we kick it back to them until they get it right to meet that minimum threshold. That's even before we've started the review to determine if you comply with structural, fire, electric, plumbing. So that can take a while back and forth. So that would be.
And who are they interacting with?
This
period of phase 0.
Phase 0, well, since we met with you in August, we're alerting the property owner that it's kicked back to their professional. But the design professional is typically allowing the expediter to handle that portion of the project to get it into the system.
But who do they engage with at DCRA in this back and forth period?
It's our permit review coordinators, PRCs we call them for short.
And once they certify that the minimum threshold is met, then it goes to
Then it is assigned to all the reviewers and the sister
Right,
agencies for
okay.
review.
And so that's when this clock starts, when they've accepted that plan for review. And then we're looking at the target review. But I think we are missing, because of the way the systems are set up, we're missing that window to know how long are people spending, 5 days, 30 days. I think for them, that's their experience. And so the data won't tell us the whole story at this moment.
So have we worked on a way to grade the design professionals and what they submit to us?
Yes, so we have 2 different categories. We have things that we're calling where you're not stamping it, where you're not sealing it, where you're not labeling it. Those are administrative challenges. We've brought that to the attention of the design professionals. They push back really hard about a grading system for those type of things. So we're focusing on the second category, which are the...
Why? Why can't, that seems easy, right? Why can't they just get it right?
It does seem easy.
So why did they push back?
Because they don't think that their business should be harmed because of those simple mistakes. Those simple oversights. That was their response.
Okay.
And
what
so
do you think?
I think I would stand a better chance when they start to complain to you about my grading system if I gave them an opportunity for training and retraining for about 60 days and say, okay, we've had these trainings, you've been invited, you've chosen not to attend, but you continue to have these problems, and now I grade you. Then I think that I could withstand the heat from your office because I'm grading them and they're losing business, because that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think what's going to happen is the ones who have a higher success rate are going to earn more business than the ones that have a lower success rate.
Yes.
And that's up to them.
Yes.
But if people don't know who is successful, then how are they supposed to make good choices? So they're paying people to do a job that the government is actually doing, and then they're blaming the government for not doing it fast enough. So how do we make sure that consumers have the information that they need to make good choices?
No, we are moving ahead on the grading. We were concentrating more on the substantive things, the bigger things. If you failed to list your elevation, that,
Well, I get that,
Okay.
but both categories prevent them from moving forward, right?
that is true.
So for the consumer, both things prevent them from getting their permit.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is the second category?
The substantive things that you're missing, right? That you've failed to include the lighting for the green program, if it's, it's under the green, and you've not done that. Or under plumbing, you haven't included the requirements for the plumbing stuff. Those are the kinds of things that are substantive that you as a design professional really should know and should have done correctly the first time.
So does anybody, let's have some discussion around how we get, so this is not an expediter issue. This is a design professionals issue.
It's what I've discovered as I drill down, it's both, because the design professional whose ultimate responsibility is to provide compliant plans, including stamping, sealing, and all of those kinds of things, they didn't do it. They've handed off the project to the expediter. It appears that the expediter's business model is to hurry up at all costs. And so when we kick it back, quite often the expediter doesn't even go back to the design professional to fix it. They try to fix it themselves because their value is getting things through. You get hired if you get things through. If you're always kicking it back to the person that hired you, then you lose business. And so that's where we have another kink in the problem, because they can't fix it. You, as an expediter, you can't seal or stamp plans. You just can't do it. So that causes another hang up.
Okay. Any thoughts?
I believe the grading system has to include both, based on the statement that Melinda just made. If there are things, we, in another line of business, the Department of Health operates, we have expediters as well. And they do present a challenge when we're having conversations directly with industry about the things that they think we should be improving. And it does end up being a challenge with what expediters don't disclose to them about the interactions we're expecting expediters to fix on their behalf. And ultimately, the customer or the patient that we're trying to serve is the one who is most adversely impacted by the level of service they believe we're not providing to them. So what may be not seen as substantive from the construction or design element, but is rearing its head frequently, I think should be also a component of that grade. I mean, we've had some instances where we were asked to go and inspect things and the wrong plan altogether was uploaded. So it wasn't even an issue of whether or not the elements were inaccurate. It was the wrong plan for the wrong project. So those types of things I think have to be paid attention to, so that people are a little bit more conscientious and detail oriented about what they're submitting to the government for us to be able to do our job when it's our turn.
Right, so perhaps we need to have a different discussion with the people. It's not so much a grade as it is an evaluation, how should I say, of how thorough they are at phase one. So come up with some kind of a grade, but it's, you get it right 100% of the time, you get it right 75%. I mean, I don't know what it is, but the way I see it, people are being taken advantage of in this process. They're paying to get a service that they're actually kicking to the government to do. I think that the system is designed so that the design professionals are bringing us a complete application, right?
Yes, they should.
But instead, they may be giving us an application that still needs 45% of the work to be done just to get in the queue.
That is correct.
So we've kind of trained them that this is going to take a long time. So half do it. We'll give you a chance to correct it, but you're in. And so you've cemented your place. So is there a penalty for doing that in any way in the process? Or do we like encourage the behavior because we let them proceed through the queue?
One could say that we encourage the behavior by correcting mistakes and allowing them to proceed.
Okay.
To that point, does this slide suggest that it takes in this data set, it takes 3 reviews because there's back and forth and corrections made before the permit is issued? Is that what the second and third review mean?
Correct.
And so is there any difference in, I mean, you pay one fee for your permit, right?
Yes.
And so what's the thinking about a different fee system for for us having to continue to review your permit?
That sounds wonderful.
As a way to disincentivize people from submitting things that aren't complete. Because ideally, you should submit it on the first review, it be correct, meet our threshold, we review it and give it back, and then you're done.
Ideally, yes.
And 93% of the permits require less than 3 reviews, right? If you look at the next, or I think slide 7 suggests that. And less than half get through on the first review, right? So if there's a different cost structure for reviews 2, 3, and 4, then you might incentivize the design professionals to give you better product.
I agree.
Along those lines, zoning and structural permit reviews stand out as, you know, much lengthier times. They're also the ones along with, I believe if we look at slide 8, more likely to require more than at least 3 reviews, along with green. Is there something that we can do to help prevent that? Do they know they take so long that, as the mayor said, they're just getting in queue? Or are there real issues with understanding what is happening and what the requirements are?
Probably both, but there are definitely real problems. Zoning and structural have to also review the third-party plans that we review on a QA/QC basis, right? So all zoning is done by DCRA. Zoning is never done by a third party. So zoning has more than our other review staff, just because they have to review everything. Structural is a clearinghouse. So structural is the last review that will sign off because they want to make sure that everybody else's stuff is done. So they'll get caught up a little bit less than zoning, but that's why their numbers are so high. One of the things that we've done since the mayor's visit in August is reduce the number of QA/QC that we do on commercial third-party plans so that we have less. However, we found that there are continuing problems, so we're bumping up our training of those third-party companies because, quite honestly, we need them to do their work correctly because of the volume of work in this jurisdiction. And so we have to keep QA and QC some commercial because there are problems, and we need to train them so they make less problems. What can we do to improve the time on zoning? After ZR 16, the complexities have increased. We don't have an answer for that right now for zoning. I mean, it's just a lot and complex.
Another, what might be helpful to this conversation about how many times, what drives the timeline here, if you go back to slide 5, for example, these different categories of review, these different categories of permit, and their total review days, if we could see that information broken out, like if you could break that out for slide 6, that would be instructive to know what kind of permit has what number of multiple reviews. So that because I'm trying to square the fact that, for example, it looks like we meet the 30-day review time for first reviews. We're slightly over for the second and third, but I don't know for what permit types that exist.
No,
and so
I
if
see
we
what you're
know
asking
what
for.
permit types exist, then you can pinpoint to that group of whether it's homeowners or design professionals where the the slowdown is, where the problem is, at least as it relates to submitting plans that are complete.
Yes, we were looking at it differently. We were trying, I think that's a great suggestion, and we'll do that, City Administrator. We were trying to identify design professionals who were having challenges, so the individual companies that were coming back, second and third, to offer them the opportunity for training. And then the next thought to ramp it up was to see if we could convince the Board of Architecture, the Board of Engineering, to have mandatory CE, continuing education units, CEUs, so that the design professionals would know what the new code required or changes that happen. So we thought if we tie that in as a mandatory, then perhaps the boards could make it, and that could help make people play in our sandbox, come to the training, because we offer it and they don't necessarily come.
How do people get notified when there's an issue with their plan? Like if they have to go through a second or third review?
Project Doc sends them an email, and it has all of the held for comment, so it tells them in the comment section what discipline is holding and what the error is and what the correction needs to be made. You know, you need to address the lighting, you need to address this code for plumbing or electrical or whatever it is.
Do you have any kind of system in Project Docs that if they don't reply, let's say they don't reply in 15 or 20 days, it pings you?
Yes, we did some enhancements so that it would ping you that we've sent it back to you, and the biggest enhancement is to let the owner know that we've sent it back and we still haven't gotten a response from you guys. And then we're having humans actually call so that they could say, okay, we've emailed you, we pinged you, and we haven't heard. Do you need our help? You know, can we help you?
You mentioned the third-party program. I think one of the things we wanted to show is the number of construction permits going through the third-party program and where we're seeing increases and decreases. It seems like if the addition, alteration, and repair is where most homeowners are, we're seeing more homeowners use third-party review. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, as the price goes up, they're using third party because they want to get it done quicker. That's, you know, what the promise of third party is to get it done quicker. So, yes.
Do they get it done quicker?
You would hear from some of the third party companies that they are not getting it as quickly as they should because of the zoning review, and that they are asking, the third-party companies, to have their review start at the same time as the sister reviews start so that they could cut out about 3 weeks. And so we're working to make that change. But the challenge was we had to go out and train all of the third-party companies on how to use the system so that they could review at the same time as the sister agencies. So we have finished the training, and they should be coming online in March. So that should cut out 3 weeks of time, because it was after the third-party companies had finished, then the sister agencies started their reviews. But now they'll start together.
Okay.
In
So
March.
one thing that we talked about, Melinda, I learned when I was there, is that third-party companies were completing a review, were assigned a review, and then DCRA would go back behind their review and inspect. Is that correct?
Well, no, the word inspect would be used for our third-party inspections, but review, we would re-review. Yes,
You
ma'am.
would re-review?
Yes.
In both cases, for plans and for inspections?
Review for plans, inspect for inspections. Yes, ma'am.
So we have the third-party program, yet we were still doing the inspections
Correct.
and reviews?
Correct.
Okay, so what is the case now?
So since you came, we've reduced the amount of commercial, because you were like, you know, they're bigger, they have more insurance, let them accept the risk. So we've reduced the number of re-review or DCRA reviews of third party. So we do a QA/QC of a small percentage of the commercial ones. However, we've maintained a level of review on our residential, because that's where the problems are, and that's where the consumer are harmed when the third-party companies miss something.
So how, it's my question then, so it'll be now, is what do we have them for?
It's to speed commerce. It's to speed development so that they can get it through. The challenge is they make mistakes and they harm consumers. And so rather than on the back end trying to fix it, we found that if we catch it during the third-party review QA/QC, we can save a lot of heartache for consumers by finding the problems and correcting them during the either review of the plans or the inspection. If they, either
So
one.
what would be the tipping point in your mind to say that they add more to the process than they are good?
Right now, I asked for data on that because I knew you would want to know. 80% of the residential plans fail that come through the third party. There are problems that we catch. And so we're working to train them. Sometimes it's that they allow their inspectors or review staff to work and they don't have the certifications in those particular areas that they're reviewing or inspecting. There are just a lot of problems. We're trying to bring them up. So the tipping point would be when it's less than 50%. Right now it's at 80.
Okay, maybe I asked that question wrong. So you're saying 80% of the plans that are being paid to go, people are paying to go through third-party review, they fail?
Yes, ma'am.
And so my question is, that can't be good for the property owner?
It is not.
So they're paying, and it also can't be faster.
It is not.
So when I say what is the tipping point, when are we gonna say this third party for residential is no good and we're gonna scrap it?
Well, there's a volume question as well, right?
So we can't handle the volume?
No.
So so us correcting their reviews.
It's like somebody's already did a first cut and then you come back and an edit, right? So you come back and you find stuff, but you've already had their staff work on it. They miss things and we catch them.
So what would be the similar statistic for the government, the DCRA review?
What would be?
If you went back, if another team went back and inspect or reviewed the DCRA reviewer,
What's their error rate?
what is their error rate? Thank you, CA.
I don't capture that data. I would hope it's less than 50%, but I don't capture that, Mayor.
Is it re-reviewed ever?
Yes, supervisors do QA/QC.
Okay.
So are you doing QA/QC on the residential third-party reviews?
Yes.
At what volume are you doing? What are you do some select percentage?
Yes, we're doing about 90.
90.
90%.
You're re-looking at 90% of what comes through the third-party program.
Because 80% of them are wrong.
Because 80% is wrong.
And when I'm talking wrong, I'm not talking about you're just missing a stamp or seal. I'm talking about you don't have the right foundation or underpinning, right? You're not doing the specialty inspections when you're doing concrete laying. You haven't provided evidence that you're not going to adversely affect a neighboring property. That's the challenge when we're dealing with infill development. And that's why we have such a heavy hand on the re-review.
What volume of work does that represent? That people select the third-party review program? Is that 1,000 permits a year? Is it 500 permits a year?
I don't have the actual number, I don't believe, but it's the lion's share. Most things go through third party.
Most things go
Right.
through third party.
Correct.
Of this big number that we started with at the beginning. Is that the universe of
No,
most?
these, I believe, are DCRA reviews that are in this data here, but there's a separate.
So this doesn't even account for that?
No, that doesn't account for that.
Okay.
These are DCRA
I got you.
review only.
Melinda, do
Yes,
you get a
Deputy.
sense about, in other jurisdictions that are close in to us, that effectively the ability either for a third party or for the design professional to submit plans, is it equal? Is DC unique in any way? Are people finding it that their first review is accepted more often than in the District of Columbia? I'm just trying to see how we fit, because other people are doing this in Montgomery County and Prince George's County and Fairfax, and I'm just trying to see, do we experience the exact same problems as other people experience?
When we went to visit with Fairfax, and they were very familiar with our construction and our challenges, they acknowledged that we had a tougher time, and so longer times and more levels of review because we have more infill development. I mean, you're taking older housing stock and trying to enlarge a basement and add something when you're going to affect neighboring properties. It just, the complexities aren't there in Fairfax. They just do different construction, is what we were told. I don't have the data with me, but even with the deck guide, one of the first templates that we rolled out, we had to alter it because our decks, were closer in. You have an opportunity or chance of fire jumping, right? So we had to add fire stopping when you don't have that in Fairfax County. So those are the different complexities between those two jurisdictions that we really drilled down to look at.
Would it make sense to have a similar grading system for the third-party reviewers that you are setting up for the design professionals?
Yes, so we're working on that as well. And, the challenge, Barry, is this is people's livelihoods. And so they are upset extremely. I mean, they're fighting full-time. I mean, it's for the death, right? And so when they make mistakes, we're trying to have a level of training so that when we pull the trigger, then we will say we've done all we can do, because it's people's livelihoods.
So what have we done in the training regime for third-party reviewers and inspectors since August?
So what we've done is, the first thing that we identified is that we wanted to make sure that if you identified that you want to do the third-party program, that all reviews except for zoning were done by the third party. That meant green and energy had to be included. So what we've had to do is to build up the capacity, because many or most of the third-party companies didn't have that capacity to do that. So we've had to do training. We've had to go out and make sure that there are subcontractors that the existing third-party companies could actually contract with to do that, and actually train them on using project docs so that they would know how to use our equipment. So we go live in March. So since August, we've had training, identified, made them understand this, and we've gone out to them, to their place of business, to make sure that they can come online in March.
Okay, so just so everybody's clear, that's an enhancement because the third-party folks could not do those reviews before. So they would do third-party and they would still have to come in and do the, which ones?
Green and energy.
Green and energy. And now there have been a subset trained to do green and energy, so that can be part of the third-party review.
Absolutely.
Now the question is that going to be more than 20% correct?
No, I really do think these individuals that are the subcontractors, they're true believers in the green program, and so I think they will be leaders in the review, and that we won't have those challenges.
All right, so I think we have to have kind of a date certain when all of the third-party reviewers and inspectors have been notified of their failure rate. Has that been officially done in any way?
I've taken the path to train them before I fail them. So
no, but I'm not saying, what I'm saying is it's an assessment, right? So we can look back over a certain period and say, you've submitted this work, and this is the amount of times we've had to correct it, or it didn't go through. And okay.
No, yes. So we do have that data. We've collected it since August. We have talked to them individually about we're going to go live with this, and we have gotten extreme pushback there.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
But
I'm ready when you're telling me, because.
Well, I told you in August.
I mean, we have it.
Okay. So this is. We need to talk about how we're going to let people know, let's pick a time, 12 months of their work with us and how they've performed over that period of time. And have they been required to attend training?
Yes, we have regular training that they're invited to come to, and we've actually gone out to their place of work on the project docs to make sure, because we wanted to have them, effective March, be able to do it at the same time as sister agencies, doing their review, to cut out that 3-week period. So we've been actually going to their shops as well as having them come in for training.
And so what has been the compliance with that training?
Oh, that's been going very well.
How many, everybody has attended every training that they're supposed to attend?
About 90%.
Okay. And how many different organizations are we talking about?
80 third-party agencies.
Is it worth establishing with them, if you're gonna give them some failure rates now, to some requirements for saying if you consistently fail at X% over X period of time, like you're gonna be prohibited from doing business with DCRA for 6 months, required to go through retraining, and then you can come back again?
We haven't set a hard and fast number, but we're happy to do so. We have levels of discipline, right? Admonition, suspension, and revocation from the program, but we don't have specified numbers there. It's discretionary on our end, but we can do that.
How do they come into the program?
They apply.
And what standard do you use to select?
Because we're working on the international accreditation for building departments, there's a level of requirements to make sure that you meet as a building department, and we impose that on the third-party companies as well, with the training, the professionals in charge, and all of the requirements, so that you are the equivalent, or you have the equivalent capabilities of a building department, because we're measured how we do collectively.
Okay, so we're obviously, Brian, going to have more conversation about where we are with third party. Let's move on.
Okay. So the slide 10 gets into some of the initial permit review times across some of our sister agencies that are around the table here. The permits that they're reviewing are different, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison across each agency, but fitting with the slide we saw earlier, the initial reviews and sometimes the complete reviews are being done under the 30-day time frame.
So who's the star among the sister agencies?
It's probably DDOT.
Wow.
I think it is.
Without question.
Thank you.
So DDOT's been, there's some data in the appendix, and Director, if you want to talk about, maybe you've cut down your average review times pretty significantly. What's happened at DDOT to change that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to point out that, this represents a subset of all the permits that DDOT is processing. So there's not a tremendous amount of overlap between the TOPS program and DCRA building permits. I mean, most of our permits are excavation permits and, parking, emergency parking requests from residents who are moving in and out of their homes. I mean, we have a whole, universe that is distinct from this. But we have, I think, in general, really benefited from automation. Our top system is very, very flexible. We're not dependent on, a single reviewer. We have a way to, drop in and review a particular permit. The users have a lot of accessibility. I mean, it all can be done remotely. Our philosophy is, basically we love our customers, but we don't necessarily need to see you. So I think we've got the right staffing levels. We're perpetually putting people through additional training, but these permits for kind of DCRA activities are not that complicated. So I think that it's, to be fair to the other agencies, I mean, we're talking about, traffic control plans, looking at sidewalk closures and access, the placement of dumpsters and staging areas and things like that. For building permits, we're kind of on the back end, and I could understand why some of these other reviews take a little bit longer, given some of the analytics that are probably required, but, the other agencies can speak to that.
Okay, let's go to DOEE. The red bars there. They're among the highest, the longest reviews.
Right, the stormwater management plans, we passed our stormwater management laws or what we call the MS4 permit in 2014. Those numbers are going down, but this is one of those that LAFA you would consider with a high level of analytics and complexity to be able to look at the ratio of the stormwater that you have to capture on site if you're a new building, or how much stormwater you have to capture on site if you're going through substantial renovation, and then figuring out how to do it, whether it be through green roofs or low-impact developments, bioswales, those different things. And so I wouldn't say it's a negotiated process, but it's a process that sometimes they can't capture it all on site, and they have to purchase stormwater management off-site to make it through. Even though it's complex, we are doing trainings. The numbers of days to permit award is going down. We do say that after 2 reviews, we charge you more money. So we want to get folks to learn it, to get it right, and to attend our trainings. But there is a complexity to this of how much, we have some of the most aggressive stormwater management requirements in the country, and we require it of everybody. Montgomery County, some others may exempt churches or other nonprofits. We don't exempt anybody, including the federal government.
So what do you think is the ideal number of days you need?
Well, for erosion and sediment control, which we have 2 reviewers that sit down at DCRA or permitters, that number has come down dramatically, and I think that could have been partially a staffing issue. But you don't have to go to it, but on 32, it shows that the average business days under review in September was down to 1.4 days. So we're getting that down. And I think one of the things that happens, especially in complex proposals, is that we have to give it back to them and say, look, find a different way to manage stormwater, or find a different way to meet your green area ratio. On that middle bar, the green area ratio, we do that on behalf of zoning. And zoning lists a whole menu of how you can meet the green area ratio, and they choose out of that menu, and then you hit a formula of whether you meet it or not. And so if they don't meet it, they got to go back and figure out their project a little bit differently. And that, again, it's, I think the areas that, with training, we're making it faster, with being sure that we have staffing. I think one of the challenges is that when you get good at this as a government employee, you become quite valuable to the private sector. We train a lot of folks that end up going to the private sector because obviously time is money and this is complex. So we don't necessarily have a staffing remuneration program to be able to necessarily compete very well with the private sector, but that's true all through government. I mean, that's just how it works. In looking at this in my review, the areas that cause the greatest heartburn in the private sector, especially around buildings and substantial renovation, is if they feel like the answers they ask for change. They need predictability. Even if sometimes it takes longer, they want to know that the answers don't change. And that's where the issue sometimes that I have found has been when someone goes on vacation, somebody picks up the plans into a second reviewer that wasn't the initial reviewer, that their judgment changes, or they catch something that the other one didn't catch, and that creates a lot of frustration. Okay. And so that's the area that I'm trying to figure out, is to assure predictability, teach folks what green area ratio, stormwater management, these things are, but at the same time be sure that the answers don't change during the review. I think one of the most frustrating learning experiences was around what we call well borings. That when you build something like the over 395, and you've got to pull off groundwater by putting pipes in the ground to suck the water out while you dig down. If you're doing it in a cornfield where there's never been a city before, you don't need to put casings and things that are expensive down. But when you do it in DC, generally need steel casings so that you don't hit one water source that's polluted, and then we hit the aquifer below it, and then screw up the water between here and Pennsylvania. And so getting predictability around this, but at the same time managing costs, so it's not always the most expensive way to do it, has been more around getting predictable regulations in. So those are the complexities, but I think that with training, with our agency being clear about regulations, but also being willing to amend them to best practices so that they have a predictable environment to work in, will be a matter of continuous improvement.
And then, Madam Mayor, for plan unit developments and larger developments that go through our process, we tell them to think about green area ratio earlier on. So it's not just architecture and design, but we say this is one of our requirements, and so how are you thinking about bioswales and design on larger projects now? So when they come up for permits, that hopefully they've done the thinking through that.
Mm-hmm. And so where do the sister agencies get it at when you determine that the application is complete? They get it for the simultaneous review?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about DOH, also pretty up there in numbers of days.
Yes, we are. So there's 2 roles we play in the process. So we have a part in plan review, and then we have a part in actual permitting or licensing. So I think most of our complaints come from actual licensing, because that's when they're ready to open the doors and make the money. So
Okay.
we do pretty well. Thank you, Jenny. We do pretty well on the initial review part, which is, as Melinda pointed out, where we are at around 8.5 days. Our goal is 14 business days. So that's when we receive it in project docs, and then we post our comments in project docs. One of our challenges we experience sometimes is that when we go in for inspection, we sometimes find that what we reviewed in plans is not what we're actually looking at in inspection. The other thing that we have is that we have to review something called a HACCP plan, which is becoming a more common tool that restaurateurs or food establishments use, which means that they are proposing to do a food preparation process that is not addressed specifically in the food code. So our inspectors have to go and meet with them and get detailed documentation of what they are proposing. So everything in their building development layout has to be done to specification and to code to make sure that however they're proposing to prepare those dishes or that food or store that food is done in a way that presents minimal health risk. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. Sometimes the failure of having a HACCP plan slows down the approval process for that opening inspection, in addition to other things that we may find from a construction perspective. So that gets us up to the 27 days. We have been thinking through some processes in terms of, are we seeing some things frequently in HACCP plans that we can sort of standardize so that we're not doing these things from scratch, or working with the food industry around in the district that could help to streamline this process and get that approval process truncated down from the 27 days. So from us, it's not just doing a walkthrough of the facility. Sometimes we get requests to come the same day, but we have to give credence to people who have actually scheduled for that day. So we try to do a 48-hour turnaround. So you request an inspection from us, we come within 48 hours to do your opening inspection. So we do not have a same-day inspection process for opening new facilities. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it's well into the hundreds in terms of the new food establishments who come online in the district annually that we're having to be responsive to, and some of them require a repeat inspection. We do try to respond to next day requests for those repeat inspections if some of those issues can be fixed or corrected within a 24-hour turnaround, so we don't have to place them right back in the queue. We try to discourage people from scheduling a inspection when they still have an outstanding plumbing issue or anything like that, because we cannot approve them. We can't approve you because you plan to fix things in the future. So some of those things are part of our delays, but it's really getting people to understand it's not just a building construction and design thing that we're coming in and saying, okay, you built everything according to plan. It's really making sure that your HACCP plan and all of that is approved as well. And the more creative they get with food, the tougher, which we all like, the tougher it gets for us to approve these things quickly.
What do you mean?
So, unconventional food preparation methods, like if it was all quick serve, those things are easier to turn around than when you have chefs who use different food preparation methods and they want to do things that are not directly addressed in the FDA food code. Then we have to sit down with them and go through a HACCP plan. Those things have to have evidence for how they're not going to present a food safety risk for the public. So those things have to have a vetting process with us back and forth, require in-person meetings oftentimes, using data to document that process. Those things are not often 24-hour turnarounds.
Now, is there one place where a person starting this process can go and either look at fact sheets, look at a video explanation, look at some kind of tutorial? Is there one place like that?
So we created something with DCRA last year in terms of food retail establishments, a quick guide to give people clarity, because what would happen, we see DCRA as the starting point. We have meetings with the food retail establishments all the time to make sure that they're clear on that. And so we did a quick guide for everybody to understand that process. Like, if you are thinking about opening a business in the district and you just want insight from us in terms of what you need to do, that's fine, but we can't start you on the process. Don't think you can come to DOH and get everything you need. You have to go through DCRA. DCRA has the same perspective in terms of we can't open you independently of having all of these approvals from the Department of Health. So we worked collaboratively on a guide, met with industry and got their input in it as well, so that it was a user-friendly tool before it was published. And that's posted on both of our websites.
Okay, but for everything, so this person building a restaurant has to have the environmental and the DDOT and the DC water. Is there one place where all of this information lives?
Well, in our analysis, Mayor, typically when you're doing a restaurant, if you're doing it in existing space, right, then the information that Dr. Nesbitt talked about in ours is comprehensive. If in fact you wanted to go to a townhouse and convert it, no, it's not. But there's so many one-offs that it wasn't easy to do a comprehensive template for that kind of approach. So we looked at the biggest bang for our buck.
What about in one of the earlier slides, we have the top 10 permits, like alteration, repair, addition, alteration, and repair, retaining wall. What about for those specific ones?
Well, what we've done, we decided to approach it on a deck guide or a template guide that we talked to you about in August, Mayor. So we started with the smaller things, so we did deck. Then we're...
Is that done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Done.
You want to tell everybody what that means?
Yes. So if you would like to have a deck built onto your your property here in the district, you can come and get the template or online, right? And if you follow this permit to a T down to the screws, right, you get your permit right then, and then you will actually get inspected and pass on inspection if you follow it exactly there. So you don't have to have a design professional or architect, anybody help you with that. Just use that template and build according to that. And so we're expanding that with the DHCD with Safe at Home for our aging community. So we're doing the ramps and the stair lifts and the chair lifts. That's our next templates that we're rolling out.
When are those going to be done?
They are in the process of being drafted, and we're going to roll it out March 1.
Okay, so ramp, chairlift, and what?
Stair lift. Stair lift. Stair lift.
So 2 things.
3 things. One's a ramp roll, which
Yeah,
is
I got
one's
mine.
a stair.
So you can actually enter into the building with the
Okay.
And then one's a
And then the
chairlift.
here inside, so you can look in the first place.
So those are the next templates that we're doing. After that, we're going to look and we're going to, because most of the existing construction or row houses, we're going to look at the most common either kitchen or bathroom renovations and try to come up with the most simple ones. And that's going to be our next pilot we're going to look at in the summer for template guides.
Okay. Let me go back a little bit to talk about DGS. Kind of, I think this is going to veer back into the third-party discussion. And we talked, because we have DGS, of course, is the biggest government user, I think, that goes to DCRA for permits.
We actually go to all of the agencies, ma'am.
You go to all of them?
We go to all of them.
So, how can we improve that process?
Well, I think one of the things we talked about already, helping with the timelines. For us, we hit everyone. So we start out with DCRA. We go through that first round on our individual projects, but we have to go through erosion and sediment control, stormwater green area ratio. If it's a historic, we come over the OP. We work with them on anything from the historic nature. Definitely, we start out with DC water as well. When you add all the times together, that's really what's impacting us. So any reduction that we can do in the times across the board is a benefit to us as we stand up the construction projects for many of our government agencies. I will also add electronic reviews. We do input and upload everything to project docs. We get the alerts if there's a concern, if there's issue, if we've got to go back. It's that time period between when we upload and when we get the alerts is important for us. Being able to have that information available, knowing exactly where it is, or at least the time frame that we can expect an alert or at least an approval through project docs would be beneficial to us.
Now, are you using third party for review?
We do. We use DCRA's list. Not only to help us expedite, we do use expediters, we also use it for reviews as well.
And inspections?
And inspections, yes. So we engage those consultants just like someone in the commercial field. Now, because we are a government agency, we make sure that our expediters, reviewers, and inspectors are following what DCRA is telling us to do.
How many of them are failing on re-review?
I don't think we have any. Very small number on our end, ma'am.
Okay.
Because we're making sure we're in lockstep with DCRA on what we do.
So one of the things I think we discussed, probably a lot of them are failing, or they're getting re-reviewed, let me say that.
Re-reviewed.
Okay. Right, they're not a kind of a separate outstanding group that's doing the DGS work.
I will say, because of our partnership, whenever there's a challenge, we immediately step in to help them get through the process as quickly as possible, because we don't want to hold up any city projects.
Okay, so you pay the third party.
I pay the third party.
Then you pay all of the fees.
We pay all of the fees,
to
yes.
DCRA that go back to the project.
Yes.
Is that the way you want to do it?
I'm not opposed to doing it, especially if it gets me shorter time frames.
Is it getting you shorter time frames? One suggestion, I don't remember where I got it, maybe Jeff and I had this conversation, was that you hire dedicated people for DGS projects.
Greer says she likes that.
I do.
Yes, we've floated that out.
Yes, that removes the expediter, that removes the third party for me, that keeps the connection there, yes.
So what's wrong with that, Melinda?
Nothing's wrong with that. We've started that with one of my staff as an internal expediter for DGS. They're on calls with Greer's staff on a regular basis, runs interference, makes sure they have what they need. So I think going further to have dedicated staff just for DGS projects seems like a good way to go.
Why don't we think about like a subset of your projects? I don't know, one agency, Parks
Sure,
and Rec, schools.
sure. Schools.
The public buildings. I don't know. Why don't we kind of think through that?
Sure.
And see what that means. What are your costs for third-party reviews and inspection?
About 2% of the construction cost.
Okay, so
We're
give me
funding for
that
that.
number overall and how that translates to FTEs.
Sure, sure. We can provide that information. And that's what I would recommend. It would need to be FTEs, plural. It's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If we're talking about a subset, the biggest thing that I worry about are schools, getting our schools construction. It's great to have one person working with us, and we truly appreciate it. But a subset, to be able to move all of our projects simultaneously would be helpful.
Okay, so I mean, let's just kind of think through it. I don't know how much thought has been given to that idea.
Will
I
do.
mean, if you took 2% of what you spend in a year on construction, that's a lot of people.
Yes, and
Not
move
that
it.
it's bad, but I'm saying that 2% buys you a lot of personnel.
Correct, correct.
You're easily spending
Correct.
$100 million a year. 2% of that's $2 million. That's
Which
20
are
people.
several, exactly, several FTEs there.
That's just the third party, or does that include the permit cost too?
The third party, yep, everything, inclusive of the permit costs.
Including the permit
Including
costs.
some of the permit costs.
They still have
But
permit
still, a
costs.
portion
But you
of
would
that,
need 20 people.
I would
So,
need
mean,
20
you
people.
could get a robust set of people.
Correct. So a
out of
portion of
that
that funding could go to
expense.
FTEs from a capital perspective.
We'll look at that also, if we should have dedicated staff for you. I know that we create a point person, or we did last summer.
Yes.
Just for school construction. Well, we'll look also to see if it needs to be more than a point person.
Okay, great.
Okay, and to your earlier point, this would represent, work becoming public work that is now private work. So some people won't like that, but I think that we have to figure out what's best for these projects.
Correct.
Okay.
So we want to wrap up with you, Mayor, by just making sure we've sort of talked through all of the challenges with you today that we identified, and then talk about any additional recommendations beyond what we've already discussed in the stat. So I think we've already talked about there not being one cross-agency permitting technology solution. Definitely from conversations with the agencies where there's not an interest in building like one enterprise solution from the ground up that everyone uses, but something that could cut across all the systems to more easily pull data and more easily be able to give us what's going on with these permits and the agencies and give more visibility maybe to the consumer. So I don't think we necessarily have an answer for what that is, other than some discussion that would be a useful thing to explore. And I don't know if Director Bowling, if there's anything that DCRA is exploring that helps with that.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about with other building departments across the country is the ease of use of our E-Plan project doc system for the users, for the end user. And so there are other products that are more user-friendly, and the one that we've decided to go with is Bluebeam. And Bluebeam is partnering with Acela, so it would be a minimum cost for us, not a huge outlay. And Fairfax County is piloting it now, and we're looking to migrate to that FY18, starting soft launch the end of this fiscal year. So again, like Jenny just said, it isn't one system, but it's easier.
So do we start all over with the challenges?
No.
If we change to another system?
It's much, much easier. I've talked to other, Tampa, huge jurisdiction that rolled it out, went from Project Docs to Bluebeam, easy implementation, intuitive for the users to use it, user-friendly. And a lot of design professionals that work here but in other jurisdictions are already familiar with it, so we don't lose anything. We gain.
Do we know if it can talk to the other sister agency systems?
Yes.
Let's start with
I'm
DC
sorry.
Water.
Oh.
All right, so we're open to, and we clearly understand the need to go to electronic review. Project Docs was interesting. I think what she's talking about says the reviewing module that I'm going to actually look at this PDF drawing with and the one that I'm going to track changes with, instead of being Project Docs, we'll switch to Bluebeam. So I think your front end of your program, how I accept people in, how I log them in, I think stays the same. And what she's really talking about is changing the reviewing module, that piece of software that says, hey, here's the plan, and here's how I make edits to it. We could function with either one. It wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
DDOT? If it interacted like Project
If
Docs
there's,
does
if
with
there, I
TOPS?
mean, I don't know enough about, those platforms, but as long as it's a link rather than, us having to migrate to a new system, I think we'd be fine.
What are the payment challenges?
When the systems were first implemented, it anticipated or required individuals to come in. Since we met with you last year with your permit, we moved to have permit payments online, but it doesn't automatically happen. It requires the property owner to tell us that they paid online so that we can issue the permit. So it requires human interaction. What our IT department at DCRA is working to do is to fix that. But first we had to upgrade our land management system, Acela. So now we finished all of that, and now they can talk to each other and automatically do that. And I think it was April 3rd is the date that we'll be able to go live on that. So it works if you call me, but it'll work automatically April 3rd without you calling me.
So every permit can be paid for online?
April 3rd, yes.
Okay.
Well, you can pay for it now, you just have to call me, I can get you your permit.
Okay.
Just one follow-up on that. What about there's a different system that people use to initially register for a permit before they're granted permission to upload to Project Docs?
Yes, the
Right.
permit application goes into OCPI, yes.
And right now, you have to physically come in to get that permission to upload to Project Docs.
You can do that part all electronically. You can do all of it electronically. People come in to pay because they want to get their physical permit. That's the part that didn't automatically happen.
Mm-hmm.
We can make it electronic, right now, but it requires a human. So you upload an OCPI, your application. If it meets a minimum threshold, you're invited to send your plans in, and you pay, depending on the type of permit, either half or a certain portion, and you can do that online. And most people do that online. It's just the second part, when you pay the last half, because you want to get your permit in your hand and you don't want to call us and all that stuff, you come in right now.
So now on April 3rd, they'll be able to pay and get it first half and second half of and get the permit. They can print it out.
Yes, and we're working on our communication strategy to get that out to all our stakeholders.
Could folks talk about the review notification process, so when you get pinged for reviews? I know there were some concerns about timely pings for folks to review things.
That would be very important for us, not only just the timely pings, just notification of just times that we could be expecting when we would get that information back from us. Sometimes without having that information and just relying on the ping, we're in a process where we're trying to move forward or move quickly through getting our permit process so we can go to construction, or we can at least start the site construction or even building of the foundation. So advance notice of that, even just expected times to know when those things are occurring, would be helpful. I also like to take a moment to add, although we have the governmental agencies here, it's important to remember that we have the non-governmental agencies, or the utilities, if you will. That's also important to this process, and add to this process the PEPCOs and the Washington Gas. Having the information from them and making sure that they're included in this timeline as well, it will give us the complete picture of what's upon us when we're going through construction.
And then, Madam Mayor, for us, some of this was some internal systems. We had some HP staff that left the agency, but we hadn't updated the system. So they were being pinged in a way to a person who wasn't in on staff anymore. So we're making sure now on the HR level to make sure that the accounts are active and that we have the staff are being distributed accordingly. So sometimes it's just an internal process you have to check from one of us as a reviewing agency.
Okay.
So moving to some of the recommendations, I think that you've heard around the table, there's either movement underway or needs to be some movement around some of the business and IT process challenges. Does the opportunity to move to the blue, is it blue dot?
Blue beam.
Blue beam, is that the opportunity to kind of get us all on the same page about what the processes are and share those?
I believe so. There's a module, so the land management system, Acela, that is bringing on Bluebeam and integrating, there's the citizens access module that will give the, and we've used it before with Deputy Mayor, like a pizza tracker information to the citizens, to the developers, to the property owners, to design professionals that will be there. I've seen it. It's map driven. We have a preview scheduled for the Deputy Mayor in the next few weeks. So I think it will enhance everybody's construction permitting experience because the information will be there and you'll see where everything is.
Okay. Are you able to, is the person going in, are they able to view it by their project rather than their permit? Because a project might have multiple permits.
No. So you're going to look at if you got a demo permit and then you got a BSIP permit and then you got a building permit, then I'm referring to the building permit itself if you've broken it down into phases, right? So yes, you're going to, no, you can't look at it by project. You can look at it by permit. But you can look at it with the citizens access. What you get is you can see all active permits there, and it's easier for you to see what's going on at that property. So there will be a enhanced transparency with this product or application.
Is it also beneficial for us internally, though, to have the view by project? So if I'm the customer coming in, I just care that my project's getting approved, right? I don't care that there's 5 different permits that you're reviewing. And so if you're talking to me about one permit and you're talking to me about another, I just want my project done. And is there I think there might be a benefit to being able to see that. So if you have someone calling to complain, maybe the alteration permit's moving through very quickly, but maybe the, stormwater permit is moving very slowly. And having that information and being able to see how long the project is taking might give us visibility into the customer experience in a way I don't think we have right now.
I hear what you're saying. One of the things that we're doing is there is no need to break a project into multiple ones. Typically, individuals do it for financing reasons, right? They want to go ahead and do something for a financing reason. But we can look to see if there's a way to link project so that you can see all of it together versus permit. Yes.
Okay.
Anything else we have here?
I think there's an opportunity to do something different with how we present the information on the website. And I was sort of thinking about that as we go through this. If I'm a Joe homeowner and I go to the website, DCRA's website, and I know I need a permit because I'm going to build a fence, it's not really intuitive to me in looking at this what I'm supposed to do next. And the language in which the information that we present assumes a certain level of knowledge and sophistication that may be there if I'm, a developer that builds buildings all the time. But if I'm a small business owner that is focused on my business, probably isn't. And so as we roll out templates for food eating establishments or for decks, I think we need to look at remaking the web so that it is more intuitive to the user. If we know the top permits, for example, that was on slide 4 or 5, and the majority of people apply for one of those permits, then we ought to think about how we organize this site to the things most commonly used, and within that, the tools that help advance the cause. You know what I mean?
Yes, in fact, we're looking forward to working with the Tiger team that you're sending over to help us look at not just the website itself, because once you drill down, the forms may not be intuitive or helpful to the applicant. And so we're looking at a holistic way to work better and communicate better with our customers and our applicants.
And I think that has to be a big part of this. If we create these tools to help people, I'm not sure that they find it particularly helpful if it is constructed in what I'm looking at now. It doesn't, it is complicated.
No, and we look forward to making it simple.
So what is your new communications plan?
So we have a big communication plan where we have things that are rolling out every month. A lot of it is tied to our IT upgrades because that are bringing products to make it safe and simple to our clients. So this month we are launching there's a nice name the deputy mayor gave us for when you come into the building and you want to schedule before you come into the building, so you'll know where you are in the queue. Or if you come in and then you see that you're 20 minutes, you can go get a coffee and come down. It has a new name that I don't recall, but it's a very good name, and it means that you're going to get express service in our center if you come in. The templates that we just talked about, we're launching those as well. So that's Mark.
Who's helping you with this?
We have our communications team that we have staffed up internally. We also have our safe and simple launch and communications information we got from our marketing efforts. So we have all of that. So all of that's working together to go out every single month, actually more than once a month, to tell you new things we're bringing. Online scheduling, online innovations that we're bringing every single month that we're doing.
Okay, did you hire somebody to help with the communications?
Yeah, we have a communications director. We have a social, her name is Anovia Daniels. We have a social media person who's in charge of that. We have a person who does the print stuff that does that. We have our video and photographer we have a whole communications.
You brought that in-house, you didn't hire a contractor?
Well, no, we did a contractor to give us the product, the visual, how it should look, and the phrases we should use. But we have internal staff to deliver it on the different things that we do in our business lines. And the branding contract, yes.
Okay.
One of the things we talked about that I'm interested to see is exploring this permitting working group. So I think maybe part of the challenge is from the customer's perspective, we're one district government, but there's multiple agencies around the table with multiple interactions. And I think it might be worthwhile if key staff from the different agencies start meeting as a group semi-regularly to discuss issues, right? Like, how are we going to present sort of one unified front to folks? How are we going to have sort of standard SLAs and measurements across each other as we think about things like Bluebeam? How does that work? And sort of having like your key point folks, maybe we can invite the utilities as well, like PEPCO, to just start working through some of this and meeting regularly to talk through some of these challenges.
It sounds to me like we need to identify maybe 2 or 3 big projects that don't have to wait for Bluebeam. You know, one of the most frustrating things that I experienced from agencies from my former life and now this one is just always waiting for these IT systems that cost $50 million and take 10 years to roll out. Like, I always feel like I'm waiting for the improvement. Like, what if, I decide, Melinda, that Bluebeam sounds great, but we've invested a lot in project docs, and let's make that work. And I might do that, to be honest with you, because I don't want to say that we got to wait for the new IT system to get better. I don't believe that. I don't. So what are we going to, what are the 3 or 4 big things we can concentrate on to improve the experience of our customers? And so, absent some change in 2018, quite frankly, maybe we won't be here in 2018. Maybe I won't be here in 2019. You know what I'm saying? So what are we going to do so that we have right now to do our jobs better? Because 2019 is not promised to anybody. You know what I mean?
Yes,
so
ma'am.
what are we going to do right now?
So what I've done right now is with the existing IT upgrades we have now, moving full speed ahead. Rolling with that. But separately, I'm looking at human capital changes. I've reassigned my emergency management coordinator to be my operations manager in the permit operations division to make sure that we identify anything that's having problems, anything that's getting held up, find trends. That's the person that's bringing to my attention, and it's actually honchoing the design companies or design professionals that are having challenges so that I can have targeted opportunities to help them learn how to use the system in a way that gets things through the system. If you bring in a large number of projects and you keep having the same problems, I need to fix that. So I'm looking at those. So that's the operations manager. I also have, I'm not sure of the HR title, but on the other side of the house, we brought in, as you may have seen, a chief building official, right, to handle. So that's helping with the supervisors being able to concentrate on the big problems and not have to double duty all of the big meetings for our current cycle of the construction code boards and other outside meetings. So that individual takes care of that. My supervisors can handle the problems that arise. I have the operations manager. I have the team that's working with a DGS, which is a large client, and things like the wharf and Capitol Crossings. We pulled together that team.
Okay.
So I've made some human changes that I think you will see improvement. And we're also focusing on the third-party program to see what it is that we can make sure that those projects get out, because they do the lion's share. So if we get those out quicker, then development gets done quicker, and I think you'll have more happiness and satisfied customers.
So we're talking about kind of a SWAT team, if you will, that's finding the problems and fixing the problems.
Yes.
We're talking about third-party improvements, which I think we need to have a little bit more, we need to make more concrete the process to getting improvements in the third party. We've identified a DGS solution that we want to think through to see if it makes sense.
Mayor, I
Yes.
would like to recommend that we use one particular project that's coming up, Coolidge School, to test the DDS improvement, as well as test some of the other improvements for Director Bowling and DCRA.
Okay.
That's coming up. It's a it's a big project, a complex project, and we'll be more than happy to use that as a test case for all of these.
Look forward to it.
When is that going to start?
We're looking to go later this year. Design will start in the spring.
Okay. Maybe we think of something sooner.
Okay.
To use as a test.
Okay.
That one too, but let's pick something. The template project, I think, is big. Although I haven't heard anybody talking about it, so I don't think anybody knows about it.
Well, the press event's later this week. It was.
So I thought you said the decks were done.
Yeah, they were, but we had to move back because of the inauguration and everything, the big press event. So it's
Okay.
out, but we haven't done our big press event. We did the soft launch.
Okay. All right. And then the issue around how we give feedback. So if we have a third-party program that we're telling the owners who's successful and who's not at navigating our system. So on the issue of the district-wide permitting group, I hesitate because I just don't want to have a continuous task force, like talking too much about things we already know. So why don't we, for now, keep that discussion with the CA and the DCRA, and then we will call people in as needed. So that we're identifying the big things. And anything else? Matt, before you came, we had a discussion with DC Water about electronic review that I want to make sure we stay on top of. That we're missing the other utilities per Greer's point. So we need to get that done. And then we need to identify how we're measuring our success. Like, as an agency, as the agency heads, for the reviewers, how are we measuring our success?
So we have broken down by permit type, by job category, meaning complex to easy. The reviewers, the time limit it takes you to review a project or application or plans. So that's how we measure the reviewers, right? And so then you roll it up to the supervisors to make sure that they meet those metrics. And then for myself and for my senior staff, we want to meet the 30-day time goal. So that includes the training, the outreach, the IT systems, everything. We want to not just say it's 30 days to get a review, it's 30 days to get your permit. So that's where we're going.
So now, is there a way that you have a section for permitting that has a associate director?
So you have the chief building official over inspections and permitting, then I have a permit operations division chief over all permitting, and then you have your structural chief, your fire and plumbing chief, your mechanical chief, and electrical chief.
Okay. So Sia, you want to talk about the team that you're sending to support these things?
Yeah, so in fact, we're going to discuss it tomorrow with all of the deputy mayors, but we wanted to put a team together of folks who had process improvement expertise, Lean Six Sigma expertise. We have a cadre of people that get trained in lots of different activities. We call it a tiger team. They come from various departments, and their job is to sort of drop in to areas and look at how we can make quick, substantial, and permanent kinds of improvements. And so the vision for this is that we look at workflows, how the business process is designed at DCRA and sister agencies, and then what we can do to either collapse time or reformat work to move the throughput through. It could also include and should include what the customer feedback mechanism is, and do we have a structured feedback loop with the customers that we serve? Are we presenting information in the best way so that the user experience is the most seamless and effective for the set of users? So we've been identifying people, and I think we have finalized who is on that team. I might need to talk to some of the agency directors, because you might not yet know that we're borrowing some of your folks to come in and make this assessment. One of them corner might be a DOH person.
There's actually 3 of them here.
Oh, they're here. So the team comes in, takes sort of an assessment of the work, this particular area, permitting, right, and then develops a work plan that tries to, if necessary, re-engineer and drive change towards the business processes. So it's the internal machinations and working of this system that we're going to be looking at.
What is the timeline for that review?
So we want to put the team in February. We want results. I want initial feedback in March and recommendations in April, because if there's anything that we need to do in 18 as a consequence of that review, we want to include it in our planning for fiscal 18.
Okay, so that is a way to deal with the recommendation around a permitting working group, right? Because isn't that the
I think
group?
it should be a way to address that issue.
Okay, all right. Anything anybody else want me to be thinking about around permitting?
I think you should be looking at the GIS solution. I mean, what would help me out as much as anybody is some commonality of naming convention. Because the name of the project will change, the location will change as it goes through the process. But if there's a graphic on the map that says geographically, this is what we're talking about. DCRA calls it this, DDOE calls it this.
Everybody can reference that same.
Yeah, and so there's some third-party way for us to tie all of our stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we've been talking about that for a long time too. With the tax system, the DCRA, you call it something else.
Again, the citizens access that I've looked at, that I'm previewing for the deputy mayor in a couple of weeks, it may not get to what my colleague is talking about, but it's a map and it's driven and it shows you the boundary. So I don't know, if it's the same exact thing, but I think our citizens, our ANCs, our applicants, our design professionals, everybody's going to be extremely pleased with being able to see what you're talking about and then drill down until the permit, if not the project, that's going on there and where you are, if it has any enforcement, all that is captured here.
But what you're talking about is if we're going to have one system that's able to pull information from all of your systems that you're using a common identifier, so we can all be sure we're looking at the exact same thing.
It's going to come into mine, and it's going to be called Fort Washington or something like that, because it's early. And then later on, it's going to be the homes at Fort Washington. And then later on, it's going to be these 37 different houses. And they're all going to have individual permits, but they're all located within this one geographic.
Whatever the spatial code or the parcel
Yeah.
ID is the thing that you,
So
what's
that
the
sounds
word
like
for that?
with the team
MAR
that's going to work with DCRA, let that
can
be
figure out
one of the
how to do that.
things you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. So I think the bottom line for us, if there's a key takeaway, is that we have to improve the experience of our customers. And part of the discussion I had during DCRA week was that we do this all the time, and we've been doing it a certain way, and we think that we are doing it right, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Probably we're not doing everything right. We're doing a lot right, and we're getting a lot, we're not explaining what we're doing right. So people think that it's wrong. But we have to either educate our customer as to our process, or we have to adapt to their expectations. It's just that simple. And so, or we have to do both. So I think there's a lot of public education that needs to be done for the homeowners, the small guys, the little guys who just want to, I just wanted to fix my steps, that's all. They were falling down, they were a safety hazard, I just wanted to fix them. Right? So we need some public education. All I want to do is go to that website and figure out what I have to do. And I just want to do it one time, and that's it. And I want to be able to pay for it and get my steps fixed. Okay, so there got to be scads of projects like that, right? And I want to understand, why do I even have to pay to get my steps fixed?
Why do you need a permit to get
Why
your?
do I need a permit to get my crumbling steps fixed? It seems pretty ridiculous. So we have to ask that question. So there has to be some public education for the people who want to get it right. Because very easily, probably, if I wasn't sitting here, I wouldn't have called DCRA to get my steps fixed. I would have just done it. And a lot of people do that. So let's educate those folks. Then we have to re-educate the folks that have been doing business with us and continue to do business with us, because we basically trained them now to muck up the process. They come in early. They have to do their applications. They lie to their client about how they're working with us. So we have a whole lot of behavior that we have to address. I also see that as public education. So what are we doing? And it has to be more than a strong suggestion. So how can we, figure out how to make people learn the process before they engage the process? And I think for the expedites, we just have to, anybody who's involved in the third party, anybody that's expediting, do they have to have a license?
Yes, BBL.
All right, so all of those things, they have to engage us, and we should require that they be expert at what they do, and figure that out. So I think there's some education around that. I think there is more education for the large property owners, because they're spending a lot of money on their end to get the projects right. And if they're not getting them right, and if there should be some benefit to doing everything right on the front end. So what are we doing for those large developments that if we tell them do this, they'll do it, because they want their projects to move. So we have to make sure we're working with them. I also think that we have to better communicate the things that we are doing right. This process, I think, in a lot of ways suffers from people's experience of 10 years ago.
So they just can't get over how bad it used to be. And then they come in, and they could be half wrong, we could be half wrong, but it's all of our fault. So we have to communicate the things that we are getting right. And then I think everybody needs to look at that bar chart that showed the number of days of review and figure out how we can do it better. Just everybody drill down on your process, and when you talk to these teams that are working with DCRA, how can we cut out, everybody can cut out some number of days, I'm sure of it. So how can we do that better? All right, so we'll talk again in April. Mm-hmm. I have my list of things to do, but I think the public education piece is big. And the reason why I talk so much about how we're communicating is, people just take in information so much differently now. And how can we use graphics? How can we use videos? How can we use all of these different things just to tell them what to do? And they'll do it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.